Alrighty, so let's pick this up where we left off yesterday. Let me see if I can get this to. I'm gonna try. Give me a second here and see if I can get this to come up and pop all the way. It's not going to cooperate. Okay, so just a quick recap from yesterday. Early on, there were very legitimate reasons why American workers would look to join a union and to become involved in organized labor of some kind or another, largely due to conditions, low wages, uh, dangerous problems for kids, and exceedingly long hours. But Americans as a whole were very hostile towards unions. Many Americans felt that unions were part of a vast conspiracy organized by um, anarchist Marxists and eventually all sort of tracing themselves back to the Illuminati as this sort of like shadowy group of people who really are just out to overthrow the government and create a brand new world order in their own image. These problems were not helped when large numbers of political immigrants, immigrants who came to America only because they were fleeing imprisonment or execution for being revolutionaries and radicals, began involving themselves in the American labor movement. And this proved to be particularly problematic. So, even though unions were legalized in 1842 under the case of Commonwealth versus Hunt, there wasn't a lot of traction with big unions in America until after the Civil War was over. The very first big union in America started in 1866. It was called the National Labor Union, and it was around for about 7 years. Now, the National Labor Union is important only in the sense that it's really the first of the successful nationwide unions. There were a lot of problems with it. It made no distinction between skilled workers, people with specific trades or crafts, like a plumber or a mason or a carpenter, or even something like a cobbler that's a shoemaker. It made no distinction between them and people with unskilled jobs like ditch diggers or machine press operators, guys who just like pulled a lever. They have very different needs and very different problems that have to be addressed. Another issue was that the National Labor Union was white male only. It did not allow minorities, nor did it allow women. What killed off the National Labor Union was its decision to embrace political radicalism and really push for the socialist agenda. This is kind of what brought about its downfall. It just became too nutty politically, and its members wanted nothing to do with it. Now, the Knights of Labor the Knights of Labor were a nationwide union that sort of followed up the National Labor Union. The Knights of Labor began at the tail end of the National Labor Union's existence. And in their peak, they were 800,000 members nationwide. What made the Knights of Labor different was they took a very different approach to the idea of unions and what labor should be after. The first thing is the Knights of Labor truly believe that in order for workers to be better and to be better served, they needed to be educated. And the Knights really pushed for this idea of worker education. They felt that educated, like cultured workers who were not just like working to get by, but people trying to better themselves, would in the long run benefit everybody. It would make the workers more productive. It would make their work and their outcomes better. It would lead naturally to more wages. So they were really big on this idea of educating workers. They also completely rejected Marxism and anarchism of any kind. They were not socialists. And there's a very specific reason for this, which we'll get to in a moment. Now, one thing I have here that is really kind of important is that this idea here, the 8-hour workday. This is the one point that every union, no matter who they are, what they believe, what they want, what they represent, they all want this. They all want an 8-hour workday. This is a big thing for unions. The Knights of Labor also fought for better working conditions for laborers. There needed to be safety regulations. There needed to be some kind of a standard. There needed to be hygiene and needed to be clean and just not gross and nasty, not threatening in any way. They also supported an end to child labor and prisoner labor. This may seem kind of weird, but one of the biggest problems that organized labor faced was the use of prisoners as workers. Many times, the wardens of a prison would literally rent out their prisoners as a cheap labor source. The wardens got a huge amount of money out of it. The workers got nothing except getting out of prison for a little while. But it's really hard to compete when the workers aren't being paid at all. This next one here, the support of cooperatives. A cooperative is a business where the employees are in part the owners. A great example of this is Woodman's here in Wisconsin. Quick Trip also is an employee-owned business. What studies have shown and what people have discovered is that cooperatives tend to do better because the employees have an interest in their success. The more the business profits, the more the employees profit, because as the owners, they share directly in those profits. So they will work harder, they will be more efficient, and they will be better customer service oriented in those cooperatives because it benefits them directly. And this is really just kind of a nice observation of common sense and how to approach things. When you have some skin in the game, so to speak, when you have an interest or a need of success, and there's an outcome that you're looking for, it's going to work better for you. And you're going to do more because you want it to succeed because it's going to help you. They also supported the idea of an income tax. And that's because they felt that there were some people in society that simply weren't contributing enough, and that ultimately this would be better if certain people paid more money. Now, going back to this rejection of Marxism, the idea of education, and even the sense of this cooperative idea, the reason the Knights of Labor stood for these things is they were actually officially chartered by the Roman Catholic Church. The Catholic Church in Europe was not keen on unions because of the connection with Marxists and socialism and this whole even indirect connection somehow or another to the Illuminati idea. These groups wanted to overthrow organized religion, and the Catholic Church wanted nothing to do with them. So when the Knights of Labor wanted to incorporate, they petitioned the Pope, the head of the Catholic Church, and asked for permission to start a union. He gave it to them, provided they openly rejected Marxism in their teachings, and they worked to educate and uplift their members and provide some means that they can, through their own entrepreneurial initiative, could maybe succeed and do better. One of the things that is so unique about the Knights of Labor is they were open to everybody. If you were a farmer or if you owned your own business, so you were technically like a bourgeois owner, the Knights of Labor was fine with you joining because their view is that as a business operator and a farmer, you were an employee. You were your own employee, but you were still an employee. So therefore, you could belong to their union. They were open to everybody, no matter what race you were. They were open to all religious groups. Even though they themselves were Catholic, they let any religious denomination join. And they were open to men and women. The Knights of Labor were very successful using peaceful means um, to achieve their outcomes. Specifically, they had a lot of success with dealing with railroads and peacefully negotiating with the railroads. What killed them was their own success, actually. They were so successful that the socialists deliberately targeted them to wipe them out. And what ended up happening was is that socialists joined the Knights of Labor secretly and then worked to undermine everything that the union was about, including directly blaming the Knights of Labor for some really horrible violent strikes that occurred. And this eventually sort of convinced the general public that the Knights themselves were dangerous, and people left them to join other unions. So tomorrow we're going to talk about the most successful of the early unions, one that's still around today, the AFL, and what made them different. So that's it for today. You can, for extra credit, there will be an option to give me a list of cooperative companies. You can get up to 5 points of extra credit for that. And it'll be kind of cool for you, I think, to realize the number of companies around America that are employee owned that you never really thought of. So, ay caramba, peace and love.